But whenever I open up a colony and it looks like that, you know, you can tell there's tons of bees in there. If it's swarm season, I'm already thinking, you know, it's a possibility.
Yeah.
But if they're already making queens, then it's a done deal. They're a cell builder.
And how many of these do you have set up?
I've got 5 of these set up here in this yard. I was running 5 here and 4 in another yard, but I'm getting tired. We're getting towards the end of the season. It seems like demand starts to kind of go down as you get into June, and so I just kind of let it work itself out. Just start running fewer cell builders.
So when does your season normally start and end?
Most of the time, sometimes, we're in southeast Missouri here, sometimes I'm grafting the last weekend of March. That's not the norm. Usually it's about the first week of April. The weather was wacky this year, so it was like 2 weeks later, so it was like mid-April before we even started grafting. But, you know, a lot of people say, well, you know, when do you start queen rearing? It's basically when the bees do.
Yeah.
You know, whenever they start making queens, like, it's go time.
Yeah.
And then you'll find out, too, at the end of your season when the nectar flow gets goofy or shuts off, and like even your best efforts, like you're getting poor quality queens or they just don't want to, then I throw in the towel. So you just kind of have to mirror their season, and it'll be different wherever you go. You know, yours will be slightly different than mine. You'll probably start a little bit later, but you maybe even be able to go a bit longer, as long as you've still got good nectar and pollen coming in. And whenever there's a big nectar flow, you'll start getting webbing, and see how these have a lot of comb around them. See all that?
Yeah.
That whenever there's a strong nectar flow coming in, they get super webby, and sometimes they'll build a whole sheet of
we've
comb.
had that happen.
They're still good most of the time. You just have to pick all the comb off to where you can actually get the cell out. But that's a good problem, because it's an abundance of nutrition, and that's what you want good, really well-fed queens. And you know, if you're grafting absolutely tiny young larvae, and you're giving them you're putting them in big colonies with lots of resources, like, you'll get top quality queens. And you know, queens are where it's at, because if you've got poor queens, you know, like, if they're not as well developed, some people use a lot of emergency queens. Some of them are okay, but some of them are a little underdeveloped.
Yeah.
And she'll have fewer ovaries, and so she physically can't lay as many eggs.
Yeah.
And if you think about it, if she can't lay as many eggs, they won't make giant colonies like that, and the giant colonies are the ones you want to split or make honey. Or so I'm kind of obsessive about queens, because really, if you've got good queens, a lot of problems work themselves out.
Yeah.
You'll have way more swarms to try to catch, or colonies to try to keep from swarming, but that's a good problem.
Yeah.
And your production will be way better too. Sweet. I think we got 3 more here. We'll keep moving. This one, they're building the comb like out into the graft. So I have to like scoot it over here a bit. And sometimes crazy stuff happens, like you'll have a miss, or, oh man, check that out. There's one blank, but I mean, those are textbook cells. But that's the thing, is just using colonies that are already wanting to make queens, you know, so you're not paddling upstream.
Yeah.
And once you figure out how they operate and, you know, what you need to be doing to where you're working with them and not against them, you can really get some killer queens. And I like making honey, but whenever I raise my own queens and I open up a colony and they're massive and big like that, to me it's way more gratifying than hurting my back and lifting heavy honey supers. So far they're looking good.
Yeah.
But that's another thing about running several is sometimes you'll have a virgin fly in one or something and you'll have a loss.
Yeah.
Or you just won't get any. But if you do several, you know, it's kind of like not having all your eggs in one basket, you know? And then sometimes you get lucky and all the frames you're pulling look like that. And see, there's a couple blanks, you know? It could have been, I could have poked it, or,
Yeah.
you know, who knows what. They're so small and fragile. It could have been beekeeper error. And then this is all JZBZ stuff, like the cell protectors, and they've got two types of cell protector. Some of them have like 4 prongs, and they're short, and then some of them have like 2, but they're super long. I guess to jab into the comb or whatever. I always use these because the other ones would be difficult to do this with. And then it just separates them. That way if they start emerging, you know, you're not losing profit rapidly. Then they're color coded. Like if I do the other yard, it's usually a different color. You know, these are yellow. I'll use blue, red, smoke, or whatever. And then I'll label it which breeder queen it came out of and when they're emerging. Because some of them I'll hold for instrumental insemination, so you have to know the birth date and whatnot, so you know exactly how old she is. And it makes it a lot easier to keep track of. You can tell these are starting to get really webby where they're building comb on them, just because there's a really heavy nectar flow coming in. It's a little bit of a pain, but it's a good thing. And it's weird too, because every different cell builder makes them different. You can see some of them are darker, some of them are shorter. The wax color varies. It just totally depends on which cell builder is making them. They all have their own personality. We had a pretty good take, so what did we graft here? 40 a frame, so 200. So we probably don't have quite 200, but enough to keep us busy. And like at the peak of the season, I was grafting not quite 400, so 360 was about where I was topping at weekly. And it was a lot to manage for a little bit, but it's short term. Yeah, pretty much April, May, and half of June. I can go to July if the nectar flow, you know, if we get rain and there's something blooming. But if we don't get rain and it gets hot, then usually mid-June we're done. You can tell the swarming urge just dies. And then even if you're pushing big colonies where they're queenless, you know, they just don't want to do it. You're not going to get cells that look like this. These are just virgin queens with attendants like we caught earlier. But if you don't water them, they're going to be done in a couple days. But just to water them, I just get a little bit of water going, and you can see it just sticks on the top. And I just go through and put some on the top, and you can see whenever they put their tongues out, these may not even be that thirsty because they're so fresh, but they're about to be shipped, so I want to make sure they're not thirsty. But usually you can see them sticking their proboscis or their tongues up and drinking, which these aren't really doing a lot. And after they stop taking it, I'll flip them upside down on a towel so the candy doesn't get all sticky and nasty from the extra water, and they're ready to ship or put back in the incubator. Yeah, these aren't really that thirsty. But if you check them again the next day, every single one of them, multiple workers will be up there drinking water. And then you can keep them for quite a while in the incubator if you need to. But without water, they just don't last. Even with candy. Yeah, see, they're not really thirsty. But I usually water them at least once a day, sometimes twice a day. And when they're really thirsty, they'll drink it all, and you'll have to go back around and put another drop on top. But these are in pretty good shape. That one's drinking. You can see her tongue out. But most of them aren't that thirsty. You can see it touching the water. I heard one piping. A lot of times if I water them, especially if they're thirsty, they'll really start piping and they'll all get noisy. Or if I've just put attendants in, a lot of times you'll have a lot of queen piping. Don't want anybody thirsty for their next day air transit. Especially if it heats up, which it hasn't been too bad here. But whenever it gets really hot, you definitely want to make sure they're well watered.
So what are you looking for right now?
I'd like to see the breeder queen, just so we could see her. But mainly just looking for frames to graft out of, to where she's, like you're seeing eggs. Mm-hmm. But then you can see, where some of them have emerged and it's just kind of a wet spot. Oh my gosh. See, that's all backfilled with nectar. I may have to dig down. That's a good one. It's all eggs in that spot. I don't think any of those have emerged yet. Can you see?
Doesn't really look like it. You need a lot too, don't you?
Yeah, it would really be good if we found. See, look at all that, man. They backfilled it. I might even need to just go down to the bottom box. I'll probably split these down because I hate to leave a breeder queen just in a giant colony. Oh, there she is. She's got a numbered disc.
Do you mark all your queens?
Yeah, like the open mated ones, I just use a paint marker on and use the color code, Mm-hmm. Some people don't care, but I kind of like to know how old they are. And then the breeder queens like this, they have a numbered disc that's glued on their back, which it's colored too. Like if we pick those ones down the hill, they're blue dots, but they're 2-year-old breeders. This girl's just 1 year old now.
Beauty.
Yeah, she looks good. Just making sure there's no eggs in those cups. But that kind of shows what the nectar flow's been like here. I mean, there's 3 boxes that are full, and they've got some clogging the brood nest still yet. I almost should have more. And I mean, that's not normal for here. Like, it's usually a pretty crappy honey production area, and so that's why I wonder if it's going to be awesome and then just nosedive. I think it kind of depends on a lot of things, like how much rain we get, if there's a nectar dearth or not. Because if we keep getting rain, they'll keep making queens a lot of times till close to July. But I don't want to hang with them that long.
Is that green frame a drone frame?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So why do you have that in there?
Just like a lot of the ones that I like that test high or are a breeder queen, I'll put one in it because they just make more drones. And then whenever I go to catch out of certain colonies, there's more to harvest. I know different people use them for different means, like IPM, or some people use it to cull drone comb and reduce the mite load. I just use it to make tons of drones.
Yeah.
Which you can tell there's a lot of them in here, and they're dark. Yeah, it's kind of making me wonder what we're going to find. I hope we get what we need. You can see that where it's the white tops here.
Yeah.
That's all that privet stuff. I've heard people in some Arkansas beekeepers talk about it, and they act like it's a really heavy nectar flow whenever it's on. I'm wondering if that nectar has kind of slowed her down some. But like if I'm looking at a colony and I'm wondering if it has VSH or not, you know how we saw a lot of those uncapped like that? You'll see just random ones like that where they, here too, that one they've pulled half of it out. I don't know if you can see it, like they chewed the head off of it. Yeah, and then some of them they just leave it open. Yeah, that'll be rough if we don't find what we want. We'll have to go to one of those blue dots. What I really like to find is just a frame where it looks like she's just laid the whole thing, and then you'll find like a band that's hatched out already that are super young.
So you don't tend to do like the timing thing?
I don't, but it makes sense, you know, like it's smart. Then it would probably keep you from digging around it like this.
Yeah.
But on only the flip side is it almost adds a step, because 4 days or whatever earlier you've got to make sure she's confined, you know, so it's a trade-off. And this is the very bottom, and some of it's kind of plugged a little bit too. Like they backfilled it with nectar. Yeah, it's kind of throwing a wrench in the works.
So have you only been grafting off of this one, or are you?
No, I alternate every week, so that's why I wanted to graft off of her, because I haven't grafted off of her for several weeks. Last week I think it was number 13, that was a blue dot, and the week before that it was like 41, I think is what I grafted out of. And so, man, I'm just finding cat brood everywhere, hardly any eggs. See, that's the downside, I guess, of not using a timing box.
Yeah.
Because you would know exactly where she's at, and well, unless they plugged it full of nectar too.
Yeah.
I guess that's possible. Okay, now we're in better shape. See how there's like eggs in the center, and then like out towards the edges, you know, they've emerged. Like if I can find a bunch where they laid, and then there's like just a wet spot there, like over here, there's quite a few. Those are the ones I love. This is a pretty good frame. And we got two sides too. We're gonna take this one, and I'll see if we can luck out and find another one. This one didn't have 3 cap supers like that other, but they had one that's finished, yeah. The past like I used to always do 2 harvests a year, and then I got to where I was doing too much, and like I would just pull late August. I'll see if I can find another one. If we can't, we'll just move on. She's 2 years old. This one's got some eggs on it too. Some of the larvae are too old, but there is a few we could graft off of this. There she goes. All right. I'll just brush these off and I'll put a feeder on it just to cover them up for a little bit. Then when we're done, we can just throw them right back in here.
What tool are you using?
I got the master grafter here. And too, like, you know how the Chinese are straight?
Yeah.
Well, it like gets in my field of view, you know, because it's right in the way. And these kind of have a crooked neck, to where I can look at exactly what I'm grabbing.